Good evening, everyone. We are very excited today to do a first in our Live 45 history. Today is a very special memorial edition in honor of ICD fellow Dr. Betty McCaig through her husband, Dr. Ross Vaughan from North Carolina. Your hosts for this evening are going to be our very own ICD USA Section President, Dr. Risa Martin, as well as the past president of both the ICD USA Section and the USA Section Foundation, and the current trustee for the ICD USA Section Foundation, Dr. Ted Robertson. To those of you who are watching live via Facebook, please use the comment section on our page to tell us where you are watching from and leave a comment or even ask a question. We will do our very best to answer all your questions if time permits. I would like to share a few highlights about Dr. Vaughan and Dr. McCaig's fascinating and very inspiring careers before we get started with our questions. First, let's meet Dr. Vaughan. Dr. Ross Vaughan is a retired neonatologist in Raleigh, North Carolina. Dr. Vaughan spent bulk of his 38-year career at Wake and Rex hospitals and was director of nurseries for many years. His other career experience includes time as a professor of pediatrics in the UNC system, 2 years as a US Navy medical officer, and international medical experience in countries including Australia, Bolivia, China, England, Mongolia, and Nicaragua. Dr. Vaughan holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a doctor of medicine from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He completed his pediatric residency and neonatal fellowship at Vanderbilt University. He is a current member of the Board of Visitors for the UNC Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center. Thank you so much, Dr. Vaughan, for joining us. Next, let's meet a lady of first. We are going to talk about Dr. McCaig. Dr. Betty McCaig, DDS, MPH, was a trailblazer in her field. She earned a bachelor's degree in dental hygiene in '71, her dental degree in '78, and a master of public health in '84, all from Carolina. She was a successful sole practitioner who owned her own dental practice in Raleigh, North Carolina for over 30 years. She was the first woman to serve as the president of the North Carolina Dental Society. She was the first woman president of the International College of Dentists and the first woman vice president of the American Dental Association. She served as the president of the Dental Foundation of North Carolina, as well as the North Carolina Board of Dental Examiners. After retiring from practice, she served as an adjunct faculty member at the UNC Adams School of Dentistry, where she mentored aspiring dentists, particularly women. She was also a member of the UNC Board of Visitors. Today, I will not be hosting, and we feel is the perfect way to honor Dr. McCaig to have the interview today hosted by her friends, as well as some of her mentees in Dr. Martin and Dr. Robertson. So please take it away, Dr. Martin.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Vaughan, for being with us this evening and sharing more about Dr. McCaig's inspiring career. You know, she was loved and admired by so many of us, and we'll share her loss with you even now after 2.5 years following her unexpected passing. I had the wonderful privilege to sit beside Betty for 4 years in our Board of Regents meetings. And I have to say, she was not only a wonderful friend, but also a great mentor for me. She taught me the ropes, shall you say, in ICD.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ted Robertson. In 1968, my senior year at the UNC School of Dentistry, I was planning to join the Navy after graduation, but I was undergoing active orthodontic treatment and they could not guarantee they'd station me somewhere where I could continue treatment. So Dr. Cliff Sturda, who was chairman of the Department of Operative Dentistry at UNC, asked me to stay on at the school in the faculty position in that department. Since I had nothing else to do, no other plans, and I was only 24 years old, I said, what the heck, I might as well do that. And I decided to do so, even though I'd never even thought about an academic career. Soon thereafter, I became course director of the two main operative preclinical courses, and then served as assistant dean of student affairs, all during the time when Betty was at dental school at UNC. So I had the pleasure of teaching Betty, who was a great student. And before she graduated, I became chairman of the Department of Operative Dentistry. So I dealt with her both as a professor and as an administrator. So my UNC faculty role began a professional relationship with Betty that lasted for almost 50 years. And we had many, many professional experiences together. So I'm honored to be here today to reflect on Betty's career and her impact on so many people and organizations, and especially to be here with Ross. So thank you, Ross, for taking the time to be with us. Now, you heard recently that Ross is a neonatologist. Ross, how and why did you end up as that being part of your career? Some of your roles were mentioned earlier, but what career or academic roles seem to satisfy you the most?
Well, let me first thank you and USA ICD for having this. It's quite an honor to be able to participate. Both Betty's family and my family are watching, and all of us were very proud of her and her participation in organized dentistry as well as ICD. So I thank you for having us. It's a little imposing for me since I'm not much of a Zoom person, but it's been fun so far. I don't know exactly. You know, sometimes you have direction, and then sometimes you feel like you're following your nose and you go from one thing to the next. I always knew I'd be a pediatrician because I basically like children better than I did adults. It's still the case, actually. And I was a pediatric resident at Vanderbilt, and one of the pioneers in neonatology ran the nursery there. Interestingly, it was a woman who was about 5 feet tall, who had a bun on the back of her head, and didn't sit well if you didn't perform. And so I grew up under that, and I really enjoyed the medicine part of it. I enjoyed dealing with prematures, their families, the nurses, and went from being a general pediatrician to being, at that time, a fairly specialized pediatrician, because I was the 8th neonatologist in North Carolina, I think. And I did that for 38 years and loved every day of it.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I'm just curious, how did you and Betty meet?
You really want to hear this. It's my favorite story.
I really do.
I can smile now when I tell it. It's been a year or two I couldn't do that. Back in the last century, 95, I was at a meeting for prevention of prematurity in Wake County, having just separated and began a divorce proceeding about a month and a half before that. The organization was run by a dentist, Leah Devlin, who was the health department director in Wake County at that time. We walked out of the meeting together, and she said, how's your family? And I said, terrible. You know, my life's in the toilet, and it's a big mess. And without missing a beat, she says, I have somebody for you to go out with. And this was June. I said, nah, I can't do it. Maybe we'll talk later at the next meeting. So 3 months later, figuring it would never happen again, we had another meeting. We walked out. She said, okay, it's 3 months later. Here's her name. Here's her phone number. You have 2 weeks to call her. And if you don't do that, I'll call her. And then we can go out all together. Well, I didn't know her. I didn't know her husband. I figured it was easier to go out with one person I didn't know rather than 3. So on the next to the last day of 2 weeks, I called her. And, you know, here's somebody calling a woman who's been single for 8 years, and I hadn't had a blind date in 30 years. So I called her, told her Leah told me to call her, She said, I don't do blind dates, but since you're a friend of Lear, I'll go with you. And I took her to an intimate dinner with 500 people for Wake Med Foundation because I kind of needed a date for that. And she said she was willing to go. And as most things, and most social things like that, she ended up knowing more people there than I did. But it was right much fun night. The next weekend, we went to a football game, a basketball game, and dinner in Chapel Hill. And 6 weeks later, for me, the deal was sealed. About 6 or 8 months later, we went to the coast. We went fishing, fly fishing at Cape Lookout. I had a ring in the tackle box and stuck on a mirror lure. I don't know how many of you know what a mirror lure even is, but I got her to take that out, and she looked at that, and like I told you, it's the only time I've ever seen her speechless. I mean, I had to ask her 2 or 3 times to respond to the question. And we got married 9 months later. The name of the boat, by the way, at that time was Blind Date. So the meeting we went to, the hospital meeting, had Barbara Bush as the speaker, and I've given her a tour of the nursery that day. So I credit meeting and marrying her to Leah Devlin and Barbara Bush. We got married the next spring and lived happily ever after.
Oh, that's a
long answer to a short question, you know?
It was wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
It was fun.
I've got a lot of little stories, obviously, being around Betty for 40 to 50 years. Back in the early days when I was on the faculty, that was those late 60s, early 70s and so forth, it was fun lecturing to the students. You could make jokes, you could pick on them and have a lot of fun back and forth and stuff like that. And I was especially cruel to the female students. And so I'd pick on them and say crazy little things, and they'd throw it back at me. And, you know, it was a lot of fun. And Betty would often refer to me as that male chauvinist pig. So that's what she would tell me about, you know, how I acted towards female students, but all in fun. Well, a few years later, we were at a meeting somewhere, and here I was with Betty and 4 or 5 of her female classmates, and they got around me and started giving me more crap about this and that. And here they were. These females now were chair people of various departments at several different dental schools, the state health department the head of this dental health department, Betty with all of her roles of the ADA and president of the Dental Society, president of the state board. And so that was a lot of fun, but it just illustrated how sharp I thought the females were back in that time in dental education. I'm not sure we could get away with some of the kidding that I did back then today, but it was a lot of fun. And part of that was one of the things, I was assistant dean of student affairs earlier in my career, and one of the things I dealt with was recruitment of minorities and women. And while Betty was in dental school, there was a time when there was a television show in the Durham, North Carolina area called the Peggy Mann Show. It was a live presentation, 30 minutes long, about a variety of topics for the local area to have interest in. And they wanted to do one on women in dentistry. And they asked me and Betty to appear on that, a live TV show. Probably the most uptight I have ever been in my life, because I could just see one of my stupid little kidding remarks come out during that interview and ruin everything. But it went well, and Betty was even very nice to me and never called me a male chauvinist pig on the TV program. So that's some experiences that I've had with her, which were really great kinds of things to have.
She'd be glad to hear you admit to all that, Ted. I've heard those stories as well.
Well, it was something else. It was a lot of fun doing all that stuff with her. You know what got Betty interested in the dental profession? Do you know how? I mean, I know she started as a hygienist and then dental school and masters and so forth, but how did she generate that interest to start with?
Well, we talked a little about that when we were talking about I got where I was. And you got to realize she grew up on a farm. I mean, she knew how to hand tobacco. She could loop tobacco. That doesn't happen anymore. She could drive a school bus. She could play basketball, women's basketball, when you had the roamer that went across the line. I don't know if you even remember that, but I think she wanted out of that. And as she put it, there were 3 female role models in the community: teachers, nurses, and dental hygienists. And she chose dental hygiene and went to UNC and did that. And then after she graduated, she went to work in the end for a guy named Bill Salland, who was a young dentist in the Triangle. And as she tells me, Bill told her one day, look, if I can do this, you can do it. And sent her to the admissions, whoever was chairman of the admissions at that time. Well, the chairman of admissions secretary didn't think women should be in dentistry. And she didn't get past the secretary. I don't know, you may know what I'm talking about. But I was shocked that there was somebody that was obstructive to what she wanted to do. But anyhow, she went back, finally admitted to Bill that she couldn't get into office. And he got her in there. And she got accepted. I think she had to do some other work before then. But she owes a lot of her getting into dental school to Bill Salland, who's been in Wilmington for years. And then she enjoyed your mentorship in a lot of different ways. So I think you should be pleased at that. You did a good job. I mean, I hope there's somebody I touched dealing with pediatric residents who was like that.
Well, she was a great student, and I was honored to be able to be a little part in some of the things that she did. She's quite a person.
Well, it sounds like you just didn't tell Betty no. That just gave her more of a challenge. So I'm wondering, how did Betty become involved in the leadership with organized dentistry and then with ICD?
I really don't know the answer to that question, because when I came into this business, she was the president of the North Carolina Dental Society and already been president of a couple of other things. And I basically just assumed that she was in an organization, she wanted to run it. And, you know, I was supposed to stay in the background. So that's what I did. It worked out really well. I learned to carry a suitcase and serve drinks. And it was a great relationship. But we were both, when we got together, we were both pretty far along in our professional career. And she liked organized dentistry, and she loved the profession of dentistry, from being a student to being the ICD president. I think the most fun she had was teaching students those last few years in Chapel Hill, and then being the president of ICD and traveling all over the world. So I'm not sure how she planned all that, but it really worked out. Great for her. And I don't know all the, you know, the people that actually came in and influenced her decision. Other than that, Ted might know some of them, but I don't.
Well, you bring up a number of things there. If I'm not mistaken, when she became president of the Dental Society, she jumped into that on her own without going through some of the regular protocol, and was overwhelmingly elected. So pointing out how the grassroots people in North Carolina viewed her as a leader. You know, you were iconic with your own professional life and so forth, but how was it as serving as first man in so many of these organizations, the North Carolina Dental Society, the American Dental Association, ICD? And I know from personal experience, you excelled at that. You were fantastic at that. But, you know, you were an example for other folks that have been in your role after that. So how did you like that?
It was great. It was fun. It's like I said, you know, we were both pretty far along, and I was in my 50s, and, you know, professionally, I kind of was pretty comfortable. But I was the only male spouse when she was vice president of the ADA. And those women were wonderful to me, and we had a lot of fun. I would go with them, you know, it'd be 12 of them and one of me. and I'd go to what they wanted to. They would never go what I wanted to, because I tried to get them to go to the Chicago Auto Show. Not a one of them even raised an eyelid about that. I thought that was the coolest thing I went to. So by the time we got to the ICD, heck, there were 3 or 4 guys in that group. So it was, you know, it wasn't quite the same. But everyone was so nice to me. The spouses were, you know, everyone comes from an interesting background, and it was a fun time. I really enjoyed it. I think I had the best deal because I didn't have to do anything during the day. I could go around these towns, communities, whatever. She had to work.
Were there times when her commitment or your commitment to professional activities caused y'all problems with anything, with activity schedule or what?
You know, I was kind of thinking about that, how walking the other day, how we worked out the fact that I was on call every 4th night, couldn't go anywhere, you know, and she, whatever, but somehow the rhythm of that, we just accepted for both of us. And, you know, if one had to do something, that was fine. And there were times we had to go in separate directions, but most of the time not. And he tried to take advantage of what the other one had to do. I mean, I went on a sabbatical to Australia for 6 months, and she went with me, which was, you know, incredibly difficult to leave her practice at that time. Mm-hmm. So we were able to negotiate that without major issues. I guess it's the best thing I could say.
So Ross, what do you think Betty would say was one of the most rewarding aspects of helping students with the ICD Student Experience Program? Did she ever talk about any of that or how it impacted her?
I don't know about the specific program. Students in general, she loved. I mean, she enjoyed her exchange with them, particularly with the ones that were, I mean, she was dealing with 4th-year students. And so, you know, they were pretty close to the end. And I think she was probably a fairly dogmatic teacher, I would think, because that's the way her personality was. But I think she enjoyed the thought that she was influencing young people and was giving them a positive experience. And she hoped they would follow in her footsteps, or one of them would, or someone would.
Well, I'm sure she was a great mentor. And we may actually hear from some of those young students. You never know. Now they're not young anymore, but they may come on. So what inspired you to donate to the program in memory of Betty?
Ted.
Excuse me?
Ted.
Ted. Oh, Ted. He was, was he prodding you?
No. He explained to me what I could do and how I could help. And I said, Betty would love that. That's great.
Oh, that's good.
I don't need to put him on the spot, but he talked to me, and I listened.
Okay, well, thank you.
And you not only made one of the largest contributions we've had to the USA section, but you made some significant contributions to UNC in a variety of settings there. I know both of y'all were very supportive of everything University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. What led you to those kinds of activities, and were there several of those that stood out more than others?
Well, as you know, there's some lessons to be learned from what we went through, because we had not planned very well for either one of our deaths. Basically, we were going to live forever, which, you know, and we would have these discussions, and I would say we would go to plan B, and she'd say, what's that? And I said, you'll make the decisions because I'm 4 years older. Well, it didn't work out that way. So I looked at the things that she loved the most, and UNC was it. And large amount of her estate went to the dental school. And then I spread it over the other places that influenced us the most. 2 kinds of scholarships, one for different low-income people, moderate-income people, which reflected kind of the backgrounds we came from, the medical school where I went, and then money to the international studies for study abroad program. Kids actually going to other countries not via Zoom, but by going in person. I think we learned a lot traveling about how people around the world are very similar in what they want for their families and their kids in terms of safety and health and education, food. And I think you learn a lot of that by seeing people face to face. So that's where those came from. UNC is very helpful to me in doing all that too.
I've got another story to tell too about Betty. When early in both of our careers, she was on one council with the ADA, I was on another. We went to Washington, D.C., not Chicago, for an ADA meeting. And while we were there, she introduced me to Kathy Ross, who later, a few years later, became president of the ADA. And I mention this because the last year I served as a delegate from North Carolina to the ADA House of Delegates. I had planned I was just going to ride off in the sunset and have a fun year, not doing anything, and having a good time, the swan song and all that. Well, Kathy Ross called me and wanted me to chair one of the reference committees, the Reference Committee on Dental Practice, the biggest one of all. And after I tried to figure out 100 ways to say no, I couldn't do it. I finally said, okay, I'll do it. And this required me having to have hearings and generate testimony and prepare a report, and then eventually to present this report to the entire House of Delegates. So I'm up on the stage at the ADA meeting, sitting there thinking, Lord have mercy, somebody's gonna ask me a question, I won't have any idea what the answer is. I probably won't even understand the question. What am I gonna do? So it's finally my turn. I walk up to the podium, and each year the different delegations from the district delegations are seated in different places. Well, that year, the 16th district, my district, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, was seated directly in front of the auditorium, directly in front of the podium where I was standing. Again, I was so nervous, I didn't know what to do. I walked up to the podium, and there in front of me, all of my friends were sitting there with newspapers up in front of their face, like this was going to be the most boring thing they've ever heard in their life. And it got me so tickled that I was able to make it through. I was up there for an hour and a half, but I didn't have to do anything. The reason I tell that, Betty is the one that calls them to do that. She's the one that told them, everybody get something and put it up there and tell him that we don't want to hear anything you have to say. So that was another example of some of the things that Betty and I had activity with. So it was pretty neat, pretty neat. I was honored to be part of a lot of things that Betty did. Probably one of the highlights is that I got her involved in ICD. I got her to become the North Carolina Deputy Regent, and then pushed her into the Regency after that. And obviously she's done a tremendous job with all that. And one of the roles that she had, as we already mentioned, is one of her passions was the International Student Experience Program. It was originally the International Student Exchange Program, where we had students from foreign countries coming here, and then we sent some to dental schools in other countries. But we changed that mainly because of logistics. There was some legal concerns and so forth. And so Betty took that over and with a passion did a great job with it. But when I became president of the foundation, Betty, I said, Betty, our biggest grant each year is to this International Student Experience Program, and we don't have that many dental schools participating. If we don't get better participation, we may have to cut back our support of that so we can do some other things. Betty just listened, looked at me a little bit and said, I'll get back with you. In about 2 months, there were about 8 or 9 more dental schools that had signed up to participate in that program. So that was typical Betty McCaig, that she'd take something and expand it and even go further with it. So that was the kind of activity that I enjoyed doing with her. Great lady. great lady. And now that's the name of that has been changed to the Betty McCaig Student Experience Program in her honor. And we're very proud of that. And that's one of the things that Ross has so generously helped to support. And we appreciate that, Ross.
Yes, we do. We thank you very much, Ross, for that. Well, could you tell us a little more about the Betty R. McCaig Scholarship Fund that is held by the Dental Foundation of North Carolina?
Actually, I don't know how that's administered or who qualifies for that, to tell you the truth. She had already set that up beforehand. And I think, you know, the way this goes, money has to be there for a year or so before it's dispersed. And I don't know that I can tell you that. I don't know that I understand that. I mean, Ted might from when he was there, but I don't know how that will be doled out in terms of amounts and recipients.
Okay. All right. Well, then she did make a few plans beforehand. That's good.
Yeah.
You know, we also have a Betty McCaig Memorial Fund within the ICD Foundation. And that was set up again to honor Betty. And there've been a number of people who have participated in supporting that, all in her honor, thanking her for the kinds of commitments and activities that she championed. And so we've been pleased to have that. Ross, you know, one of the things that was memorable to me after Betty's death was a celebration in Chapel Hill. It was put together. This was in February of 2019, I think, in huge auditorium there within the confines of one of the areas within the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And everybody who was anybody in dentistry in North Carolina and other surrounding states were in attendance at that. And I thought that was just fantastic. And some of the testimonies that were given there were outstanding. It was so pleasant and pleasing to see so many people show up and what they thought of Betty McCaig for all of her various roles and everything that she did. So we know she was passionate about her profession. And it seemed from all the information I heard from family at that celebration, she was very passionate about her family as well. I assume that's true, and I assume that was a memorable thing for you as part of your family being so receptive to her.
Yeah, that event basically was, I think, planned by her niece, Jennifer Harmon, who I was, you know, she died in Denver, and I stayed there a week before I came back, and Jennifer called and said, here's where we should have the service. I hadn't even thought about that. So Jennifer said, let's have it there. And she did arrangements, and all those people showed up. I have no idea how they all got there. I mean, there were people from Chicago, a couple of other places. You know, Joe and Lisa came, and I asked people to speak that had known her longer than I had known her. Every one of those had known her years longer than I had, and everyone said fine. Most everybody didn't talk too long. And the woman who performed the service had married us in my backyard. I'd worked with her my whole career. She was a hospital chaplain. And both sides of our family showed up, her family, extended family, and mine as well. Some people from our high school days. And it was just an amazing thing. But if you ask how it happened, I'm not totally sure. Other than Jennifer kind of ran the whole thing. And they took me over there and took me home.
But it must have made a huge positive impression on you to see the outpouring of care and concern from all of those people, because the place was completely filled. It was unbelievable.
And there were people from all all phases of her life from the beginning to the end, literally, and for me as well. So it was, people were incredibly kind at that.
So Ross, a lot of people have been watching this interview, and Joe Keneally is one of them, and he's asked me to ask you, and I hope it will be a clean story, but he says, ask Ross about the two old Caucasians at the Panda Preserve in Chengdu.
Yeah, I love that. I tell that story. There are a couple of China stories that are good, but the four of us were standing there watching the pandas, Joe and I and Lisa and Betty. And these, I don't know, four little like teenage Chinese guys were standing there. And they came up to us with cameras, and we expected that they would want to take pictures of the blonde-headed beauties that we were standing with. But no, they didn't. They took us by the arm and wanted to take pictures of two gray-haired white guys. So they put us in front of the pandas and took our pictures. I think it really chapped Lisa and Betty off to that. We loved it, actually, to tell you the truth.
Oh my goodness.
But we had a couple of experiences about who got their picture taken. You could tell there were some places that had not seen many Caucasians.
So I know that Betty was very organized. Sitting beside her, she came in with all of her T's crossed and I's dotted, and she seemed to just enjoy work and enjoy life, and I really appreciated that about her. So what do you believe that Betty would share about how she balanced her work life with her, professional life, and how that might help younger dentists?
I think I'll always strive to do better, to make yourself better, to make the profession better, and to make the world a better place as best you can do it, as corny as that sounds. But, she kept her head down. She worked hard. She believed in what she was doing, and it was hard to get in her way.
That's good. Good words of wisdom. Excellent.
Were you ever surprised at her passion and her rise in every organization that she participated in?
Kind of initially, because that is not what I do, and but when you're older doing some of this, you cut through a lot of the crap. You get to the heart of the matter from both sides of the relationship pretty quick, and it was part of who she was, and it was I admired it, and I thought it was an incredible ability she had. I wish I'd have had some of it, but so I just stood there and watched, and took the bags into the room.
So you've had a lot of say hello, of course, from Christine Benoit and Joe Keneally, Elliot Paisner, Jennifer Edens from UNC, Julio Rodriguez, Keith Sushi, Sarah Vaughan, of course. So I just want you to know we have lots of people that are watching, a lot of people that are commenting, and just wishing you well and thanking you for being on here and saying how classy of a lady Betty was.
Well, thank you for the honor she has and that I was a part of it. It's been fun.
So is there a personal quote that you and Betty would like to share with others?
Well, I got to ask that, and I have one thing that was sent to me. I think Lisa Howard sent this to me, and you get a lot of things like this, and this is the one I kept because I found the same one in her drawer when I was cleaning out some of her drawers, some of her belongings. And I took the bottom line of this poem, and it's on her tombstone that's in our family cemetery down in Nashville, North Carolina, where I'm from. So this is the closest I could come to something that might be common to both of us.
Let me read that for everyone. But first, let me say that Betty was blessed to have all the qualities to be a great leader. She was extremely bright, very articulate, visionary, and personable. When she spoke, people wanted to hear what she had to say. And she had a way of dissecting issues to dumb it down to where even I could usually understand it. And her forward thinking was always something that resulted in great ideas and projects. Most importantly, she had a passion for what she did, whether it was personal or professional. She gave everything her best effort. Her dedication to promoting and supporting dental students was immense, and she loved teaching them and seeing them develop their skills and their knowledge and professionalism. It was an honor to have had the opportunity to be around to see the impact that she had on others and on her profession. So here's this poem. I give you this one thought to keep. I am with you still, I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awake in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in a circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not think of me as gone. I am with you still in each new dawn. Ross, my best to you as you continue on this journey without Betty. We both realize that sadness is facing a future without the one you planned it with. Thank you.
I know you've been there, Ted, so I appreciate your comments.
Ross, thank you so much for being with us this evening and for sharing this personal experience of your life. And everybody has had a heartfelt comment here that they miss Betty dearly and they love you dearly still. So thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts.
Thank everyone. I appreciate it.
Again, I would like to thank everyone for joining. I mean, a good way to sum this up, I would say, is a quote. I don't know who said it, but I think it is very fitting for this evening. It is, you know, when someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. And I think hearing the stories, I think Dr. Vaughan will agree, Dr. McCaig is not only a treasure for your family, but also for our ICD family. And, you know, we do dearly miss her. And again, I would like to thank your daughter and niece for joining. Everyone in the comment section, you know, we would love for you to share your favorite Betty story. So if you want to take some time, you know, write your favorite story of Betty McCaig. You know, I'm sure Ross would really love to go back and look at the comment section and read your favorite story about her. Thank you again, Dr. Vaughan, for joining us. We truly do appreciate your time. So coming up, I just want to go over a few announcements. In October, just a reminder, we have our annual session where we will be inducting our newest fellows. We hope to see everyone there. Don't forget to sign up by going to the ICD website. Also on the website, you can see all of our live 45s. Just gonna go and hover on the events tab, and then you can have the drop-down list and you can go to the link. The next 2 months, we are gonna have some special people, as always we do. We gonna have a couple of friends who I've actually had the opportunity of working with and also I look up to. On September 14th, we will be interviewing Dr. Michael Farmer, who is a general dentist in North Carolina, and we'll be talking about his work in Uganda. And in October 5th, we will be interviewing our last year key cover highlight, Dr. Sheely Gupta from Austin. And we will be talking about her work in public dentistry. She works with the St. David's Foundation in Austin. So please keep those dates in mind at the schedule. We truly look forward to seeing everyone at the meeting as well as those live 45s. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope everyone has a great time.